Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
All right, let's go. It's Long Shots Open Championship Edition. We are in studio here at Circa Sportsbook. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds next to me. Matt Brown with the week off. That's okay. Wes and I can handle everything from here. Wes, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. Looking forward to getting to the final major and see if we can be the champion golfer of the year.
That's right. That would be nice. You and I, we flirted a little bit last week at the Scottish Open. Matt Fitzpatrick just around long enough to tease you and me. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, congratulations, Chris Goddard, and we'll move on. Rory couldn't close in, couldn't get there in the end. Goddard takes it home over to the Scottish Open, but we're moving over to Ireland now in Royal Portrush for the Open Championship. Looking at the odds board here, Scotty Scheffler plus 450 is your favorite. No surprise there. Shop around if you are interested in top of the board. These odds are wildly different from shop to shop. Rory McIlroy plus 750. This is over at DraftKings. Jon Rahm 12-1. Bryson DeChambeau 20-1. Xander Schauffele 25-1. Tommy Fleetwood 28-1. Everybody else 30-1 or longer. Wes, wanted to start with just betting the Open Championship. What do you do differently compared to other majors? What recommendations do you have out there for bettors or people that are handicapping at home to maybe look at this week as opposed to other major weeks?
Yeah, of course, this is a different style of golf. It is links, true links golf. Like last week in Scotland, it was kind of a facsimile.
Yeah.
It was an American design links course that has only been designed for about 15 years. This course, or this club, Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland, which, by the way, not on the island of Great Britain, so there's a geography fact there for you. But this club was established in 1888. The course, the links, was originally designed kind of in somewhat of its current form in 1929. So this is a true links course. So different style, which means slower greens. And, we'll get to that in the stats when we break that down later in the program. These are some of the slowest greens they'll putt on all year. These are 10 on the stimp meter. So slow greens. Obviously, you look at this course. The video I know that Golf Digest put out that we might have B-roll for, or I put in the column, it's all green. It's not going to be green. It's going to be dry because they haven't gotten a lot of weather, even though they're probably going to get some rain intermittently throughout the week. But you're going to see those brown patches that you always see on the link-style golf courses, and probably it's going to play firmer and faster than it normally would because they haven't had a lot of weather really leading up to the Open Championship this summer. So you got to look at that, and I go back to weather, and I know we'll cover that in the second segment. Weather is obviously very important because, as you can see on the B-roll, not really many trees, if any, on a link-style design. So it is exposed to the wind. It is off the coast there in Northern Ireland. So if you watch this event, by the way, in 2019 was the last time the Open was at Royal Portrush, where Shane Lowry kind of ran away and hid on Sunday, Tommy Fleetwood runner-up. The weather got very gnarly on not only Thursday, but also on Sunday, where you had 25, 30-mile-an-hour gust of wind. I don't think we're going to get that this week, but you had that, and that's going to play into it. And especially if you're betting like those first-round leaders, you could get a big-time draw bias. You won't get a bigger draw bias than you'll get in the Open.
Yeah, that is exactly where to start, in my opinion, when you talk about betting the Open compared to other majors. It is, look, hey, Wes and I are here doing long shots like we do every single week. We've got bets to talk about. Wes has bets that he has to write about. It's part of our jobs. We've got to do this stuff early. My biggest piece of advice is wait on any bets you make for as long as you possibly can leading up to Wednesday. Now, if you are in the United States, this is going to be late Wednesday night when these first tee times are going to go off. If you can wait till about then before you put in your bets, I highly recommend you do so. The more you know about what the weather's going to look like, and especially early on, especially on Thursday, the more beneficial it's going to be for you. So right now, we'll get to that in the second segment, but right now it's looking kind of tame. But no, I know going into the tournament, hearing from a lot of the people at the course, it was, man, pretty dried out, right? Getting a lot of wind, not a ton of rain, so things moving, ball's moving fast right now, looking pretty dry. We can talk about it right now. It does look like there's going to be Look, it's an open championship. We are going to get rain at some point. There's above 50% chance every single day that we're going to see some at some point. I thought, though, from a wind standpoint, Wes, it looks like Thursday's really the only day that it could be bad. The rest of the weekend, not too bad, it looks like, for an open championship. But again, this is why I say wait as long as you can, because this stuff will change. Yeah,
and we did have the tee times released, by the way, this morning. And more often than not, it's going to be a little bit easier in the morning,
right?
On day one, on Thursday, because the wind is not picked up early in the morning. I believe 6:35 there, Northern Ireland time. So 1:35 if you were on the East Coast, if you were in New York or New Jersey or where have you. 10:35 first tee time for us here on the West Coast. So get the Peacock going. That's why I have the Peacock, Kelly, not for Love Island, but for the Open Championship and Days of Our Lives too. That's my guilty pleasure. But nevertheless, you're going to see, I think, a little bit of a draw bias perhaps on day one.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's going to maybe materialize all 4 rounds, but I think day one, you probably, if you're looking first round leader, you want to have a heavier portfolio, I think, when in doubt in the morning, guys.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Even having said that, be careful, because it is open. This stuff can change even after you've locked stuff in. This stuff can change in a matter of hours. So something you definitely want to be careful with. And to that same point, I would suggest holding back some money to get in live too. It's same thing. You're going to have some golfers that they get if weather moves around, and it likely will. You could think this has happened a couple times to us this year, right? You try to get greedy with the wave advantage, or you think you've got all the times figured out. Then guess what? There's a stoppage in play or a delay, or the weather comes in a little later, and all your plans get blown up. And then you're starting from scratch. So that's why I would say hold back some money that maybe you want to get in live if you're going to be watching.
Yeah, because when we get to the picks later on for my outright card, I went about half and half. Half in the morning. That's how it ended up being. But in terms of like the placements, I'm waiting a little bit until tomorrow to kind of, see, because you want those guys, I think, that get off to the good starts. So I've just basically got the outright stuff, and then I'll get into the placements and the props. That'll be up at vsin.com/picks tomorrow.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, all of our bets, and of course, Wes's article every week over at vsin.com. We'll have Byron Lindeque joining us later in the show, too. Excited to get a third voice.
The Model Maniac.
That's right, the Model Maniac. And do not be fooled by his accent. He is South African. Do not insult him when we're over here talking the Open Championship, okay? I don't know who I was talking to with that, not Wes.
You were warning somebody.
Somebody. Don't be confused.
Somebody has cast aspersions on the nation of South Africa.
Just tournament details real quick. If you're looking for DFS, just kind of different pools that you might be playing. We are a full 156-man field for this week. Top 70 in ties is the cut. So that is a little bit of an important note. Not top 65. There is no within 10 shot rule, anything like that. Top 70 in ties advanced past Friday. Yes, we are at Royal Portrush. This is a par 71, a little over 7,300 yards. So pretty long, par 71. Average fairway width, 28 yards. Sounds like a bunch of the quotes from some of the golfers so far out there, Wes. It's looking like it's going to be a challenge off the tee, and we'll talk about that in a sec, but it's a major championship. It's going to be a test of every club in the bag, pretty much. The rough. I had to double check this one with my own eyes a couple times. Yes, if you're watching at YouTube or at home later, that is 2 inches to 2 feet is what we're looking at with the rough. If you are just off the edge, sure, you might have 2 inches worth of rough. If you're way off, you're going to be dealing with some thick stuff. Water danger holes, there are 2 that come into play. 57 bunkers, not that many for an Open Championship. I also have read a couple quotes from players this week, though. Positioning of those bunkers, Wes, sounds like it's been a bit more strategic than it was in 2019, and actually in the heads of a little bit of some of these guys off the tee. So something to look out for there. And then we do have some smaller than usual greens that we'll be dealing with here at Royal Portrush compared to what we normally see on a traditional links style course or an Open Championship.
Yeah, there are some differences on this course. There are some similarities too, because by the way, the redesign team, Martin Aber and Tom McKenzie, have done redesigns at other open road courses, Royal Lytham, Royal Troon, Turnberry, St. George, Carnoustie, pretty much everywhere but St. Andrews and Muirfield. So there are some similarities, but there are some differences. You mentioned the bunkers. There's maybe some forced carries off the tee. There are more dog legs on this course off the tee. The agronomy pretty much fescue throughout. Some of the rough has some bent grass and some native grasses. First cut, not too bad, but it can get nasty, obviously, as you see in the video, as you get further and further out. The greens, I think, were the ones that really stood out. The fact of how small they are, 1,500, 400 square feet average. They're more undulated, and they're also elevated.
Yep.
Most of the open courses that you see, you have these flat greens, right? And you see these guys and they can run it up onto the green. Even if they, the ball doesn't drop on approach onto the green, they can run it up there and they can get a little bit more creative. With the elevated greens here, because you have those severe runoff areas, you got to land them on the green. You can't run them up because they're, if you try that, they're going to roll back down. So a lot of your, like on your par throws, like your third shots where you're going to have to try to scramble and get up and down for par, then you can play those bump and runs a little bit around the green, but you cannot play those from the fairway. So tight runoffs, some tricky lies around here. The greens are a little bit more complex, and they're obviously painfully slow at 10 on the Stimpmeter.
Yeah, totally. I think that does. We'll talk a little bit about it. We saw similar speeds last week, so, question is an advantage for the guys that got over to the Scottish Open and played that ahead of time, or not really. Wes and I will discuss that a little bit further. I do think that is worth, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to repeat what you just said. I think one of the biggest differences at Royal Portrush compared to some of the other courses that we see in the Open rotation, it is exactly how you can play around the greens, right? It is those elevated greens. There's going to be not much around the green play like you're talking about, running it up there. You're going to have to put stuff in the air, use some wedges around the green to get up there onto those greens that are elevated, and just kind of approach play. That also means that's going to be more important. So we'll dive into all this.
Second shot golf course. When do we hear that about every single week?
We never say that on this podcast. We never say that. All right, when we come back, Wes and I will roll through all the stats that we looked at for modeling purposes and what might help you at home. More to come when we come back.
This is Longshots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome back to Long Shots. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds here. Stick around. Byron Lindeque, the model maniac on Twitter, will be joining us next segment. We'll get his thoughts on the Open Championship, Wes. For now, though, let's dive into kind of what we looked at. What did we plug in the models this week? What stats really jumped out to us when we dug into handicapping Royal Portrush? I will kick it over to you first. I think this is, I said it last segment, but it's a major. This is kind of a test of every part of your game, and you're gonna need to have every club in the bag working. You're gonna need to get lucky when it comes to weather and some of the bounces, and that's who your winner's gonna be at the Open Championship. Pretty damn simple, right?
Yeah, and then you add the weather can put the bugaboo in it. But you and I are certified by the American Meteorological Society, so we are giving the most accurate forecast.
That's right,
here on Long Shots right here on VSiN. And
stick around for traffic coming up in 5.
Traffic and weather together, absolutely on the 5s. But yeah, you're going to have to, it's got to be a well-rounded game here. I don't think that this necessarily favors any type of player. Length is never a disadvantage, but it's not as much of an advantage, I think, this week. 73-81, like that used to be a long course, right? Yeah. But now it's relatively short. So, I don't think that you necessarily have to be a bomber off the tee. If you look back in 2019 with the Open, like Shane Lowry can get it out there, but he's not somebody I would necessarily consider a bomber off the tee.
Nor would
I Tommy Fleetwood. So when I was looking at that leaderboard and just trying to recall, gosh, I remember JB Holmes was in third place and he shot like an 80-something on Sunday, or shot like an 87. So that tells you how the weather was as he fell down the board. But you did have some bombers play well here in 2023, or 2019, I should say. Finau can obviously get it out there. Robert McIntyre a little bit can get it out there. So it was a mixed bag, essentially. But you got to use every club in the bag, and you've got to be especially good, as we mentioned, with the elevated greens with the irons.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, look, when we're talking any Open Championship, scrambling around the green play is usually going to be a factor, usually going to be something you want to look at pretty heavily. Definitely was for me. I'll kind of start at the top. I just factored in weighted tee to green overall a fair amount this week. Wes, wanted to see, you broke down the green complexes pretty well. Who's getting it to the greens? That's what I want to see. Who's getting it to the green in 2 shots, maybe 3 if it's a par 5, that's fine. But who can get it onto the green in 2 is really who I'm looking for. Any way you get it done, that's fine. So I started with tee to green. I weighted a fair amount off the tee stuff, and you're right. I did emphasize accuracy more than distance. 28-yard wide fairways. They're not exactly super wide, and you can get into some real bad trouble real quick if you go too wide of them. So a little bit of a premium on accuracy for me this week, but like you said, distance never hurts. I do think that we could see some bombers find some success this week. So I did factor in a little bit of total driving and some driving distance as well. So kind of sprinkled all over some of the driving categories. Then heavy approach stats. Really, like you said, this is going to be a big-time second shot golf course this week. Looking at approach, I'm looking at opportunities gained, who can put it close and give themselves a look at birdie, who's good with some of those long irons, the proximity buckets we talk about sometimes. 200 to 225 I looked at. I didn't do much more than that, Wes, just because you don't know how much wind's going to affect things, if weather comes into play, etc. Greens and regulation, not something that I usually use that often, but I think with a course like this, who's just getting it on the green? I need to know who gets it on the green. I don't want you to struggle with around the green on these dangerous complexes that are set up. So factored all that in, got 11 par 4s. That are tough to score on, so I did strokes gained par 4s as well. Wanted to see who found success on those. And then strokes gained putting, did that last week as well for the Scottish. Just didn't do a specific surface, didn't do anything more than that either, just pure strokes gained putting. And then a bunch of save your ass stats, bogey avoidance, around the green play, scrambling. I think those are all important, all going to come into play with an Open Championship.
Yeah, where I started, and it was very heavy approach for me for the obvious reasons that you mentioned, especially the fact that the greens are elevated and they have runoff. So if they don't hold, then you're going to have to get your around the green, and I'll get to that momentarily. From a driving standpoint, I think positioning over power here seems like it's a good way to go. So driving accuracy, good drives gained. I think is another one. Certainly, if you want to look at that, you don't necessarily have to go, because off the tee maybe sometimes can have a little bit of a distance bias.
Yeah.
So, that's why I think good drives gain a little better. Bogey avoidance, as we mentioned, not only the weather, but the small greens and the fact that they're complex. So bogeys can lurk all over the place. Scrambling and around the green, kind of a combo platter. Scrambling, obviously, is getting up and down for par. And you're going to have to do that. But you also might have the opportunity to gain around the green. And those that can, are good with their chipping and their little short pitches and bump and runs. And if you can hole a couple of those out, you're going to gain a lot of strokes around the green. You're going to gain a lot on the leaderboard. So I did that.
Great explanation, but difference between those stats and why with a tournament like this, to me, it's important to factor both in.
Yeah, without question, because there are times, you're going to have to grind out pars. I mean, I know it's not a U.S. Open, but still in any major championship, you're going to have to do that. And, like you said, save your S stats. I think that's an appropriate moniker for it. Strokes gained putting. I did base putting. I didn't necessarily go because these are fescue greens, so you don't really see a lot of these. So this isn't like the Bermuda or bent grass or even POA that you're going to see regularly throughout the year. These are a little bit more fescue. There's some bent grass in them, but it's a little bit dormant. So I only went with base putting, and then I went strokes gained putting on slow greens, because these are the slowest greens that these guys are going to see all year. And sometimes maybe the Europeans or the DP World Tour guys can have an advantage because they at least play on these more than I think the American guys do. Because how many weeks do we have on the PGA Tour, or even live for that matter, where 13 on the stimp meter, fast Bermuda greens, and that's what they're going to get in the warm climates, especially in the spring. These are very slow. And then I went strokes gained total, average per round, the Open. Guys that have played this a few times, I think experience kind of matters here. And I've got, little trends and angles that I list, but if you give them context, a lot of these players are guys that have played the Open at least a handful of times, or guys that are in their 30s. Not that a young 20-something can't win, but experience, I think, matters here, because it just takes a little while to get used to. Like, look, we haven't exactly seen the best player in the world by a country mile right now, Scottie Scheffler. We haven't really seen him play like amazing at the Open, because he's getting used to it. He's only had a couple appearances at the Open, so I think that experience definitely matters.
Just to put in perspective, Scottie Scheffler has been amazing at Open Championships, just not amazing up to his standards.
Right, exactly. Like, he hasn't been right there to win, but top 10 finishes and whatnot. But yeah, I think Open Championship experience matters, and you will see older guys win this tournament too. Not so much in recent years, but you've seen the 30 and 40 somethings win here. The Zach, not on this course, but in the Open, Zach Johnson, Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els, Molinari, and then recent years, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa in 2021. So a couple of young guns, but mostly experienced guys. Like, you usually don't get some rookie on the tour that comes out and wins here.
Yeah, look, once we go through all our bets, you're not going to hear many surprise names on my card and say, who's that? Like, I've never heard of that guy before. But here's what I can guarantee you. On the final day on Sunday, there's going to be a name or two on the top page of the leaderboard that you're thinking, who the hell is this guy?
Remember last year, I think it was Daniel Brown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I believe, who was the first round leader.
Was he the Uber driver, right?
Yeah.
Uber Eats driver or something like that?
Something like that. He had some kind of a side hustle that he doesn't no longer have to have. But you did have a few. I think I'm just recalling last year from memory. Kirsten Lawrence. From South Africa.
Might remember him from earlier this year too. But.
Yes, exactly. So you had a lot of these guys that were in place. Dan Brown, Kirsten Lawrence, Matthew Jordan, Billy Horschel, who's a known name, but was the third round leader going into the final round, where Schauffele beat Horschel and rose by 2.
Couple questions for you before we get to Byron, and then final segment. Wes and I will go through all of our bets that we did make so far. One name that jumped out to you that you ended up betting that you were not expecting to be betting at all going into the week.
Our boy Keegan Bradley.
Man, you're going to pull me in, aren't you? I hadn't read your article yet.
Who won at the Travelers for us. Tommy Fleetwood kind of fumbled the bag, so kind of helped us out. But we don't ask any questions. We just cash tickets, which is what it's all about.
Well, okay, so I am interested to discuss more Keegan with you later, because he has not had great success at the Opens, but we noted at the time around the Travelers, one of the better, I feel like quietly, one of the better around the green players that's on the tour right now. So, okay. I will go with Russell Henley to answer that one. I was not expecting to be
spoiler alert, he's
as
also
involved with Russell Henley this week as I am. So
more to come on Russell Henley later on my card.
Okay, one big name that you want nothing to do with this week, who I would say is top 10, top 15 on the odds.
I hesitate to say this because I think he's got the talent to win anywhere, but Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah, it's you
for
and me
me.
both. Buddy.
He has not really, I think, figured links golf out so much. And you would think he'd be an amazing links player, being that he's so creative around the green and with his shots, but only one top 10 in his career at the Open Championship.
Yeah, you and me both. That was my answer as well. Byron Lindeque, we catch up with on the other side. More Open Championship preview.
This is Longshots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Welcome back to Long Shots. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds with you today. Matt Brown's got the day off, the week off. He's golfing somewhere. I don't know. Must be nice to be Matt Brown. Hey, guess what? If you're building your card for the weekend, don't forget VSiN Pro gives you everything you need to stay sharp. As of right now, your first month is just $9.99. Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to see all the subscription options. Wes, one of my favorite follows on golf Twitter, one of the nicer places on sports betting Twitter. I think that's fair, right?
Yes.
Compared to other sports where it's a nightmare out there. Golf is actually, everybody's pretty nice to each other, it feels like. Byron Lindeque, we're welcoming in now, host of the Back Nine Bets and Fantasy Golf Degenerate podcast. Love talking with Byron, always has great stuff for us. And also, I can't let this go by, 2023 FSWA Golf Writer of the Year. So someone with some credentials on the show, Wes.
And they don't call him the model maniac for nothing,
no, they do not.
With that resume.
No, they do not. Byron, welcome to the show. Love the shirt as always. Looking good.
Boys, thank you so much for having me on. I was watching prior and had to take a quick trip to the bathroom to shave up the beard a little bit because the beard game on the show is phenomenal. So happy to be part of the core here on the beard side. And, golf Twitter, we all just hate the tour. So we're not hating on each other. We're just kind of gunning after the commish.
Yeah, that's right.
Byron doesn't have to use the Just for Men like I do to get rid of some of the gray, which I didn't do a good job enough today, but...
Wes, you're looking great as always, my friend. Don't worry about it. Byron, I want to start with you where we kind of talked about first segment. Biggest difference for you when you're diving into handicapping an Open versus, any other tournament, but it was specifically other majors. What are you looking at differently, and betting-wise, what are you betting maybe differently than what you're doing in other tournaments?
Perfect. So I typically try and go by this golden rule of in all majors, betting people that are only finished first or second in a major prior. The last 12 Open champions have finished second or better in a major before that. So that's rule number one for most majors apart from the US Open. We've seen a bit of variance there a lot more often. Then the second rule for me, the second box you have to check is having a top 10 at the Open Championship. 11 of the last 14 Open champions had a top 10 prior. So, we got Cam Smith with the 20th. And then we've got Colin with the 35th, I think, and then Louis had missed a couple cuts before. So those are the only three exceptions. One of those even came on a course that you can't really call a links-style venue. So what I take from then is just strokes gained from majors, because the problem with the Open in particular is there's so much more statistics across the three different tours. We're not just dealing with the live guys coming over. We've got a lot more DP World Tour guys in the field as well. So pretty much using major experience, and you're going to get dinged a little bit if you don't have major strokes gained. So it kind of works organically in that way. Then I bring in a bit of recent form and things like that. So I like to use the position placements on the major leaderboards as a big handicapping device.
Byron Lindeque, the model maniac, is our guest. And Byron, when we model, look, I think a lot of us, we pretty much look at the same statistics on a week in and week out basis. We may weigh them a little bit differently. Approach or good drives gained or strokes gained around the green, scrambling. I'm sure we've all included that in some of our models this week. With the Open Championship, though, it is a little bit unique because you get draw biases at other events, but they're the most pronounced in the Open Championship when you get to the weather. Of course, we had the tee times released this morning, and we're all kind of looking. It's like, do we have more morning guys on Thursday, or do we have more afternoon guys? When you're handicapping this, do you take that into account, or is it just kind of like, you know what? It spit out who I like this week, and I'm just going to go with it regardless of what side of the draw that they're on?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're we get pushed in a little bit of a corner on the content side, right? We all have to produce our stuff before Tuesdays, Mondays. If we could just put like a wormhole into the existence and just shoot all of our content from like Wednesday afternoon back into the beginning of the week, that's ideally how you want to handicap this. So we do a bit of both. Ideally, you jump in the Discords and you kind of make your DFS changes and things like that, because you can obviously fiddle around with those lineups until lock. But betting, unless you can cash out, kind of just got to stick with your guys, leave a little bit of bank in the change in the bank, like Kelley mentioned earlier, to kind of take a quick fire at a couple guys down the board as the tournament unfolds.
Byron, I'm going to ask you about a couple guys at the top of the board. I know we got some of your bets to roll through as well. Scheffler and Rory this week. How did you approach both? Any interest in betting either, or were they pretty easy for you to kind of move on further down the board from?
Yeah, no interest in either. Just the prices are a little rough over there. I mean, I'm not in the mood. I've ridden that single bullet Rory world, baby, and it's been a rough one. I've been on him every time he hasn't won and off him every time he has. So it's kind of one of those situations. You just kind of got to ride the form there if you like Rory. Scotty, at a major, at an Open, he's being priced like he's playing Bay Hill. He's being priced like he's playing the Memorial. I don't quite agree with that price. I think he should be him and Rory co-favorites around about 6. So that's kind of my take on the top two.
So let's go one down from the board, and that would be one Jon Rahm, who's now been shortened, I think, about 12-1 market average. Shop around, see if you can get a rogue number like a 14 or something. But Jon Rahm this year, Byron, hasn't won yet. Has certainly not played poor golf by any stretch of the imagination. He's in the top 10 pretty much every week but one on Live. Couple top 10s at the majors this year, including at the PGA and the U.S. Open. Do you think he's right there to win, and would you be willing to bet him to win this week? Because we know he's got Open Championship pedigree, and he can win, and he shot 65 at Valderrama. Not a great prep for this course, but still a very difficult course. There's nothing wrong with shooting 65 ever there. So where are you on Jon Rahm this week?
I'm all in on Jon Rahm. I've bet him at the 14 that you mentioned out there a while ago. I think a lot of people are on Jon Rahm. I just did a little salt and pepper thread on Twitter where I give you one good point, one bad point. Jon Rahm has finished top 11 in 4 of the last 5 Open Championships. It's also been, for a guy of his high standards, he's only had 1 second place a year ago, at Liverpool. So we're going on 2 years now without a top 5 in majors. I just think, given his buoyancy and ability to not get blown away in the Opens, I fancy him just being around. And like I mentioned, having pedigree, he's one of the few guys that typically has pedigree that hangs around quite often. Maybe he catches a gazelle or two ahead of him that hasn't had a top 10 in an Open Championship or a top 2 in a major and kind of fumbles down the stretch there. And John loves running down some prey. So I think he's the lion to watch out for this week out in Ireland.
See, that's a South African thing right there. Catch the gazelle. See,
Yes.
did you catch that, Wes? Just want to make sure everybody's up to speed back from earlier in the show, okay?
Not the kangaroo, the gazelle.
All right, Byron, I have no idea when you changed your profile picture on Twitter. I'm gonna guess it was this week though, because you sent me one other outright you like. Please explain who it was.
Absolutely. I had to go with Justin Rose to the profile picture this week. I feel like he's zesty. He's fiery right now. That little 63 around Renaissance Club has got me feeling all sorts of good stuff. I've pegged him to either win the Masters or the Open from the beginning of the year. I watched the Netflix doc, and I'm all in on that narrative as well. Great golfer in the Open Championships. His ball striking has found a groove here in the last couple of days. And, when you talk about pedigree, he's obviously got a runner-up finish at the Open last year, so checks that box, and a second to Rory McIlroy at the Masters earlier this year. So when he gets into the moment, he's more of a mental golfer than a physical guy. I don't think the swing's ever missing. It's just his mentality that is, so the Masters, the majors, that's when Rosie really shines.
I like it. Byron, let's before we run out of time, I want to make sure we get to all your other bets that you do like as of right now. Again, if you're watching live, thanks for hopping on live on YouTube. Live, we're recording this, though, if you're listening back. This is about noon Pacific time on Tuesday, so thoughts could change on some of these guys depending on the weather. But, Byron, who else do you like for bets right now?
Yeah, I'm all in on Tom Kim as well. I've got an outright on him too, but we got the top 5 there at 18-1 for that. So I fancy him a lot. Also, a second place at Liverpool 2 years ago, and we showed a bit of form at the Genesis. He thrives on these links type venues. So kind of just trying to pick my poison there. Great value on someone that hasn't necessarily been playing the greatest this year, but going to venues that can kind of suit his skill set. Also, ditch the caddy. So now he's flying free. Paul Tesori's, I don't know. Don't know how good he is for Tom's soul, but we'll find out this week. So that'll be a fun one. Jon Rahm, like we mentioned, the buoyancy king. He's always going to be right in the mix there. So give me that top 10 as well with him at plus 115. And then Xander Schauffele has got the most top 20s along with Scotty Scheffler over the last 19 majors. 15 of those bad boys. So he's the defending Open champion. Really haven't seen any upside from him lately, but man, he has been consistent with the ball striking, and that's going to just keep him right in that top 20 at plus 125 for the most winningest bet you could have made in majors over the last 5 years. So give me old Xander there for a top 20. Betting to win $100 on Xander every time he plays in a major would have returned you $1,000 over the last 5 years. So that's a really cool stat on Xander. And then Bryson, just a volatile individual on some really, really bad terrain for him. I think he's going to miss the cut at some plus 230 options.
Love it. Byron, thanks for joining us. That stat about Xander Schauffele's while you follow him on Twitter at The Model Maniac. Check him out now. Byron, we'll catch you up soon, and we'll do more on the other side. Wes and I have all our bets to go through.
This is Longshots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Final segment here on Long Shots. Kelley Bydlon, Wes Reynolds with you. Time to get through all of our bets for the Open Championship. I was really going to lean into that, Wes, and say the whatever number Open Championship, but I don't remember.
The 153rd.
This is
Open,
why Wes Reynolds is here.
And we didn't introduce ourselves like the late great Ivor Robeson. No, on the tee, Kelley Bydlon.
That's pretty good.
I miss Ivor. He was always the starter for many of the Open Championships. Passed away a few years ago, but looking forward nonetheless. I just love the coverage. I love the overnight golf.
Too.
I love the bagpipes theme that they have on the broadcast, and I just like this. It is more worldly.
I don't like to be the guy who... I'm not going to be the guy who hates on NBC or CBS coverage, but it's always nice to get the Sky Sports mixed in, too.
I love that.
That was great last weekend for the
that.
Scottish Open, so yeah, it's... I always enjoy that.
Because I'm used to those guys from, if you watch on the golf, on the DP World Tour early in the mornings on Sundays, which I usually do. So, yeah, very excited. Should be a fun week.
All right, let's start with your bets, my friend. We'll roll through all of those, and then I will talk through mine. First of all, did you make any outright bets before this week?
I did.
Okay.
I had one. I still put the number. I have a better number on Fitzpatrick, but still I thought was playable. By the way, placement markets, props, I'll have like maybe some low nationality markets or something like that. That'll be up tomorrow at VSiN.com/picks. Wrote about the outrights, gave the course preview that's up now at VSiN.com. But let's start it with Jon Rahm. We talked about him last segment with Byron Lindeque, our previous guest. 16, that's not available anymore, but the 12s and the 14s I still think are playable. Hasn't won this year, but he's rediscovered his game in the majors. He was right there in the PGA. Remember, he kind of went for broke there at Quail Hollow and then imploded at the Green Mile in the final 3 holes, but he had to do that because, you got Scotty Scheffler coming around the turn. It's like, well, I got to do something desperate to, go ahead and beat him or get into a playoff, and he did. Ended up finishing, I believe, 8th. Top 10 at the U.S. Open as well. 7th or better in 3 of the last 4 Open Championships. And he's been kind of out of sight, out of mind. So it's been a little quiet for him. But inside the top 10 in 9 of 10 events on LIV. Had the 65 on Sunday at a very difficult and very narrow course in Valderrama. So maybe, he's driving the ball well and hitting a lot of fairways. Ended up finishing runner-up behind Taylor Gooch. So Jon Rahm there at 14, 16-ish, even 12-ish. Also, Tyrrell Hatton will go at 33-1. Best career major championship finish. T4 at Oakmont at the U.S. Open. He's already won this year. Won the Dubai Desert Classic on the DP World Tour back in January. 3-time winner, by the way, of the Alfred Dunhill Links, including the defending champion. And the Dunhill Links is played in September on the DP World Tour, where you play on 3 different courses. 2 of them are open road courses, St. Andrews, Carnoustie. So he's got Links pedigree here. Tyrrell Hatton, 33-1. Above him, Victor Hovland, 30-1. He did miss the cut at Troon last year, but no worse than 13th in any of his Open appearances. First time at Royal Portrush, but has played some of these Harry Colt designs. Another one that's kind of a corollary is Wentworth, where they played the BMW PGA 2/5 there back in 2022, 2023. The around the green game, which is his weakness, has been better lately. He was second around the greens at the U.S. Open when he was a contender. Unfortunately, didn't get home at the end for us. 9th in scrambling last week at the Scottish, so Victor Hovland, 30-1.
Yeah, real quick, Wes, I'll just jump in with a couple notes. Vic, I got real close on, ended up leaving off my card. Still, my brain can't handle the whole, he's not a good scrambler. Right. He's not a good around the greens. And then he shows up in the majors.
But then you see in the majors and he's terrific.
It's wild.
Doesn't have the thick stuff necessarily around the greens, but I think he could go well. Robert McIntyre, Bobby Mack, 40-1. 6 here in his debut at Portrush in 2019. Also has won on a Harry Colt design. His first PGA Tour win, as a matter of fact, last summer with his father on the bag, the 2024 RBC up there in Hamilton, Ontario. 5th at Royal County Down last year in the Irish Open, which is kind of a links-esque course that's very comparable, I think, to Portrush. He's been playing links golf his entire life. He is a Scotsman. Runner-up at the U.S. Open last month. I think that gave him a taste of what it's like to contend in a major, and I think that experience is going to pay off for him. Speaking of a guy who's contended in a major and won a major for us a couple years ago, Matt Fitzpatrick, 55-1. Bad year last year. starting to turn it around. Two top 10s in his last 2 events, by the way, T4 in Scotland. Yep. He only had 2 top 10 finishes all of 2024. Split with the caddy, his longtime bagman, Billy Foster. He's now with Daniel Perrott. And I think that's paid dividends. He's played very well and been very consistent in the spring and the summer. So Fitzpatrick, I have a little bit better number. You could still get 50, 55. I think that's absolutely playable. One that you and I think, share, Russell Henley, 65-1, 8 top 10s and 14 starts, 1 at the API, 5th at the Memorial, 10th at the U.S. Open, 2nd in the Travelers, was 5th at Royal Troon last year in the Open. Really good around the green and approach. So I don't think his lack of length off the tee is going to hurt him necessarily this week. Already talked about Keegan Bradley, who I think is already on the Ryder Cup team. Now, he has to make that decision himself, but if he contends here, there's no doubt. He's on the Ryder.
Play and captain. I will
absolutely.
I will not get back to this long shots argument.
Yes.
Matt's not here to defend his side anyways. Play and captain, Keegan. You can do it.
Exactly. You got enough assistant. They've got like 5 or 6 assistant captains on both sides anyway.
They can do the tough work of figuring out matchups.
So let Kevin Kisner, whoever your other guys are, do some work for that. So Keegan Bradley, 100-1. And then Tom McKibben. I hate to call something an obvious long shot, but it kind of is at 150-1, and I think he'll be popular as a longer shot because he's a member of this course at Royal Portrush. He's Northern Ireland. He's only 22 years old, by the way. He's got a lot of pedigree. He's won once on the DP World Tour a couple years ago.
This is a guy you have bet, though, multiple times.
Yeah.
I mean, several times.
He's a real big hitter off the tee, too, and he's a teammate of Rahm's. I don't know what the teams are on Live, so forgive me, I don't know, but he's Rahm's teammate. Rahm has spoke very highly of this guy, so that's a pretty darn good endorsement. Playing good golf here, too. 2 top 5 finishes in his last 2 events, was 4th last weekend at Valderrama. 6 top 7 finishes worldwide this season. So he also, by the way, is in the first group off the tee on Thursday morning at 6:45 there in Northern Ireland time. So he is first off the tee, so that means, maybe a first-round leader consideration. I don't know. Usually you get one of those low rounds very early when the weather's not as bad. So Tom McKibben, 150-1.
You rarely hear Wes's voice go that high, so that might be a tell right there for first-round leader. All right, I'm going to go through outright bets that I've made the past, week or so. Xander Schauffele, 30-1. Love it still. I egg Xander 25-1 range. I would still be in on that.
We talked over the break, piggybacking off Byron. Top 20 auto bet.
Yeah.
And it has been all year, really, even though Xander has not been at his peak yet.
Yeah, fully endorse that. I'm in on that as well. And then, other ones that I made Matt Fitzpatrick over the weekend. You and I bet him both last week as well. Once I saw him playing good golf last weekend, I said, let me get in on 70-1 before this number runs away. So in on that, what'd you say? You saw 55-1 still?
Yeah. And there's some 50s out there as well. So I think that's very playable.
Yeah, I think that's still playable as well. Colin Morikawa is the one I regret, 33-1. I don't like where Morikawa is.
Speaking of Billy Foster, he is now on Colin Morikawa's bag, by the way, Matt Fitzpatrick's former. But Colin Morikawa goes through caddies
for real.
Very quickly.
He's having a rough.
Like I go through Diet Pepsis or beers or whatever beverage you want to call it.
I was looking for something else there, but okay. Morikawa, you can just cross that off, no consideration at home. My 2 other outrights that I made this week, then, Jon Rahm and Russell Henley. Rahm I had kind of always been planning on. I wish I had jumped ahead and gotten a better number like you did. Good breakdown, so I don't have to spend time going through these. Wes just kind of hit on everything. But Rahm, look, he's gaining everywhere right now. Off the tee, on approach, around the green. This is the type of player that you want at a course like this. Russell Henley, I was shocked that how well he rated out for me. And looking back, T5 last year you brought up. Love Henley this week. Bet him in the outright market. Bet him in a matchup over Joaquin Niemann. Bet him in top 20s. And then real quick, top 5s, covering Rahm and Henley with top 5s. Also playing a top 10 on Rahm, so kind of laddering down on Rahm from that outright position. Top 20s then, Tommy Fleetwood. Going right back to top 20, Tommy. Plus 115, you're getting on him. Xander Schauffele, pretty sizable top 20 bet, like you said. I love that. Plus 120. Matt Fitzpatrick, I'm in on a top 20 at plus 160. Over 2-1 on Russell Henley for a top 20. Love that bet this week. And then a couple early matchups for me. Not going to be as bold as Byron of going by Bryson DeChambeau to miss the cut, but I will play Tommy Fleetwood and Xander Schauffele against him in matchups at, I don't know, shockingly cheap prices to me, Wes. Minus 115 on Xander in a matchup over DeChambeau. That surprised me a little bit. So that's everything I'm in on early. Reminder, all of me and Wes's plays will be up at VSiN.com. Go check out Wes's article up at VSiN.com as well. And keep tuned there because we will be adding stuff. I guarantee you I'm going to add stuff between now and when we tee off late tomorrow night on the West Coast, Thursday morning if you're out on the East Coast or in Europe. And also be adding live round by round stuff. I'm sure Wes will be as well through the tournament. So for Wes, I'm Kelley. Subscribe, 5 stars, leave us some comments, send us some tweets if you got questions. We're happy to answer anything. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week right here on Long Shots.
Do the contest.
About time.
Yeah. I know.